right, looks like we are live. Welcome everybody. So in yesterday's video, you saw me in yesterday's stream go through this and develop this grizzly bear. So today, this is kind of how we ended up. I worked on it throughout the rest of yesterday, and today I'm going to get through to adding some of the rocks and basically tying in the bear to its surroundings. So here is what my color palette looks like. I streamed this live with the channel members before going live here on the channel. So if you guys are interested in my color mixing, just a more of a one-on-one chat, check that out. But I'm just going to get right into it. So I basically have some rocks through here that are kind of unfinished, and a little bit here, and I didn't anticipate the bear being exactly where it was going to be, so this needs to be darkened up right here. Let's see who's in the chat. Hello everybody. Hi from Minnesota, Algeria. Hi from India. Hey everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Having a swell Sunday. It's Sunday here. Maybe Monday for some people. Don't be shy to hop in the comments. I'm happy to answer questions, anything like that. So one of the things that I was thinking about as I was putting this bear into place was a little bit, this painting is all about light. So I want there to be, I've got these peaks of light kind of streaming in from all different places, and I want to emphasize that and maybe add another one in behind the bear. So I'm looking for, these rocks are mostly gray. But this is pretty thick paint, so I'm using oils. These are Gamblin artist oils. And I do put all the materials and things I use in the description. And then I got a liquid and impasto mixed into these, and some paint thinner as well. Is that the same palette from the other day? Yeah, yes it is. So this is the palette. Somebody asked about this in the stream for the members just a little bit ago. It's from my plein air box. So it's from a Gorilla Painter Pashad box. And it's just like a piece of balsa wood, and it kind of slides in and out of the paint box. So it comes in handy because it's super lightweight, and it works great for these purposes. I like to hold my palette a lot of times. Really helps me when I can hold up my colors and kind of compare it with the actual painting. I don't want to ruin what I've got. On my bear, but I want to get close to it. Hey Rick, are you making a print of this one? Yeah, so I will be doing prints. It's going to be a few weeks yet, so I'll have to image it after it dries. And I used to rush when I image my painting, meaning I photograph. So I'm just getting like just a roll of paint on the brush, and then I'm I'm picking up that roll, and then I'm sort of touching the canvas and then swiping it down. It's very sporadic and kind of random. But yeah, I used to jump the gun a little bit when I'd image my paintings, and I'd image them before I'd varnish it. And I kind of learned that varnish really does help the painting a lot in terms of how brilliant it is. It really gets rid of any imperfections that might be kind of reflecting some light or things like that. So It'll be a few weeks yet, long story short, before I can image it, and but I will be doing some prints, yes. So somebody just asked about the blue handle dagger striper brush versus the one I have. The brown handle, I was trying those out for a while, but I think they actually rose the price up on those, and so I only have a few of these left, and I'm pretty much using the blue kind. So the ones in the link, that I really don't see the difference between the two, and I think they're a lot cheaper. This one I'm using now is from the Umbria series, is what they call it. But I use the brush at this point in the painting. Yes, this is kind of the only brush that I'm using. Let's darken this rock here. Pick up some of these blues. The colors I started with were ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, green shade, titanium white, burnt sienna. Then I had cad orange, cad yellow light, cad yellow deep, quinacridone magenta. Did I say that already? And then that's kind of what else I mixed. But at this point, I will be using just like the dagger striper brush. But in the beginning, another brush, I mentioned this yesterday, I should put that down in the description as well, was the Fox Squirrel 3/4 inch. It's like an angled flat brush. I like the angle because I kind of hold it this way and then it sits flush to the canvas rather than having to keep it kind of cocked up. So you kind of keep a nice angle on it and still make full contact. Okay. Who forgot to hit the like? Yeah, smash that like button. Really appreciate all you guys being here. Hello again. If I missed you, if you're just joining, welcome. All right, so I've got some empty spots and kind of some gaps that I still haven't covered, where I haven't covered the sort of the underpainting here yet, and I should get that all covered. I usually use canvas. I'm trying a wood panel for a friend. Have you ever used a wooden panel? Yeah, I mean, they're great too. I do like using them. I think they're good for smaller sizes. When it comes to bigger things, one of the things I think about with these larger pieces is just to talk about my canvas surface as well, I use the cradled hardboard by Ampersand. It's 2 inches deep, so it has like a 2-inch frame, just like a normal stretch canvas, except for, of course, it has the wood, and then I glue the canvas on top of that. And the reason I don't paint just on the wood is not because I don't like it, but it's because I worry about durability over the long term, and especially the corners and the edges of the canvas. I think they're really vulnerable sometimes, and it can be easily chipped, and I have chipped many of the corners on things like this. So by wrapping it in canvas, so I glue it down with a bookkeeping acid-free archival glue, and I'll mix the glue with water, and then I glue that down to the board. And when I wrap it around the edges and glue the edges, it really provides like a nice durable layer, so that I don't have to worry about, you know, in the future something chipping. And if it did chip on the corner, if it was bumped accidentally, the canvas, being that it's wrapped in canvas, that canvas is going to hold it together. And you know, so instead of having your painting chip off, the canvas will most likely survive that, and it'll still hold things together, maybe even if it's cracked underneath that. So that's kind of why I do it in this way. Now, if I got bigger than this is 30 by 40. I would want to use a stretch canvas, just because it does get very heavy. These in themselves are probably a 25-pound canvas. Okay, so essentially we've got like light coming through right in front of the bear, but then I kind of wanted the bear to be somewhat in the shade, but then there's light streaking across his head, and then perhaps some shade behind the bear, and then a little bit of light peeking in back here. I'll get to that a little bit later. So in front, I've got water kind of spilling over, and I'm trying to think about how to piece this together the right way to make it look like the water is sort of curling down in front of the bear. Nikki asks, what are your stages of painting? Do you block in? So yeah, I think I chatted about this yesterday. I apologize if I did. But I like to think of blocking in as something that I do actively while I'm piecing it all together, and then before I let it dry, I just go right in over the top of that and I continue to work. So you saw me with the bear yesterday. I essentially blocked it in. It had kind of like a brief ugly stage in the beginning, and then I just started to build up thicker paint on the brush and go in over the top of that. And I think that a heavier medium, something stickier, like I like to use the liquid and pastel rather than the liquid and original, which is just more fluid. And I think that thicker, heavier medium allows you to stack up paint on top of itself a little bit easier without everything blending together. And so that kind of could come down to just the consistency of your paint rather than what medium you're using. So just keeping it thicker kind of allows me to just layer on top of wet paint without it mixing together. So you saw me kind of block in initially, and I used to let it dry, but now I think maybe with confidence over time, I've gotten a little more confident in myself to just keep going. And I finish most everything in one layer of paint these days. So I do think in a way of blocking in, but then I don't really let myself stop. So I kind of do a lot of this painting in like smaller portions, and try to complete those portions in one sitting, and then move on, and then I'll try to tie my previous day's work into what I'm currently adding into the canvas. Alright, so I've got this rock back here. I think I'm going to just go I'm going to go on the left side of the bear before I get too far to the right. Just came in. Welcome. Is this all oils or acrylic underneath? It is all oils. And I do list everything I use in the description. And if I didn't done this one, I'll go back and make sure that's added. But it stays pretty much the same for each painting. It might change in the future, but for now I've been sticking with kind of the same routine. So I want something showing up underneath that bear. And I think I want it to be illuminated a little bit. So I've got some of this nice warm brown, orange, a little bit of white there. I'm kind of rolling it. I swipe it on, mix it, and then I'm just kind of rolling it back onto the brush. Okay. I think the language of a paintbrush is very important. I don't take things seriously, or I don't plan out what I'm doing, but I feel like I have to plan for that. If that makes it's a really weird concept, but I try not to think about my brush strokes, especially with like things like rocks. Now the bear yesterday, and I think I'm mostly done with the bear, but that was probably the most challenging part of this painting. I spent a lot of time in the afternoon, and I probably worked on the bear. I thought about going live last night, but there's just too much going on. But I worked at the bear till about 9 p.m. last night. Took a little bit of a break midday, but that was difficult. So I wouldn't say this necessarily applies to the bear itself, but when it comes to things like the rocks and the foliage and the water, I mean, there's an infinite number of ways that they could look. And so to achieve that, I think it's very easy. A lot of people think about clouds this way. It's very easy to overthink something like a cloud because, they're so random and sporadic. And so how do you plan to be random and sporadic in the way that you paint it? And that's a tough thing. So I really have to think to myself how I do that. And so it's very planned, but then in the actual motion of the brush stroke, anymore these days, I'm becoming more unplanned with the way that I do that. I think that's too dark. That's better. What's the secret to not rush? Classical music is working for you? Yeah, it definitely is. I don't think. Yeah, and another question about music. Do you see you wearing earbuds? Yeah, what I was just going to say is I don't think any music in particular is something that I stick to. It really depends how I feel. But I listen to just about everything. I mean, from classic rock, 80s, 70s. I listen to a lot of 90s music. And then, yeah, sometimes I do like listening to things that are soft and ambient and classical. It just depends how I'm feeling. I do like to listen to I randomly listen to bits and pieces of things on YouTube or maybe podcasts, but nothing in specific. It really changes, I would say, day to day. Do you ever use transparent oils for glazing? That's a good question. So, yeah. I never try to glaze with a really opaque color. I'm not good with knowing what those are in particular offhand. But if you're going to glaze, definitely glaze with a transparent color. But I don't do a lot of glazing anymore. I find that the paint turns out to be much cleaner in the end. When you glaze, you're also opening the painting up to be attacked by the dust and different particles. But not just, that's a smaller problem to have, but more so, I really like the way that opaque paint looks, and I think that the more opaque it is, really reflects that light instead of absorbing the light. So if I do glaze, and I've been thinking about glazing in this painting, but it's only going to be way up high in the corner of the sky, just because I want a little bit of depth or contrast added to that area. But things can get very dark and drab, and I used to do a lot of glazing, but it's a hard thing to balance. I feel like I'm still having a lot. That's one of the things that I need to educate myself more in and around that area. So I'm trying to do less glazing. I would just probably prefer to move away from glazing, and I would rather see myself be able to be able to finish something in one go. So as I kind of, I'll stroke some highlights across, and then I'll add some of the shadows down like this over the top of that, and then the combination of it all is kind of what you see with the rest of these rocks, and that's really the only thing I'm doing to achieve these rocks. I think it provides a really nice effect. Umbria, does Amazon have them? It's the Dagger Striper Umbria series by Princeton, so it's a Princeton brand. But the Princeton Select Dagger Striper is pretty much the same thing, and I'm gonna probably stick with those in the future. I typically just follow the prices, and I think they raised the prices on this Umbria one, like I said, so I really don't see the difference between the two, the advantage. Okay, so I'm going to add some black. This is kind of the back edge of the water. Mickey41, appreciate what you're doing with these live streams. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Hope this brings more subs to your channel. I appreciate it. For anyone just joining, I post the color mixing. I stream that to the channel members before going live on the channel here. And then I also do the membership. I really like to have more about the reference photos. I really think we've got a good library of reference photos starting to develop. I take a lot of beautiful reference photos from just the area in and around Yellowstone, a lot of the wilderness locally here. And it helps me with it really gets me out and helps me with my process of gathering photos and challenging me to get those photos and edit them to try and, it's all about getting out and practicing. I took a hike this morning, hiked up the mountain, and that's just a great way I like to start my day as well. Just kind of put me in my subject matter. Let me start thinking about the wild. So I try to do that. I usually go on a hike almost every day. Chris, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. Love your work. Would love to do a collab with you someday. Yeah. In the future, I'm really in the past. I think I sort of just hopped on YouTube without thinking much about it, and I started to realize pretty quick that it was so important for me to keep my focus on my art. And although I love making the videos, I don't love the time that it takes, and that comes along with it, with the editing, and it really takes away from my artwork. And so doing things like these live streams, and perhaps some collabs moving forward, that I would love to get into that. I think I can already tell that I've been really happy the last few days not having to do so much work on the computer, and being able to just jump on and stream live has been just an awesome way to keep sharing. And I've always said I wouldn't mind people showing up in a public studio, and so why not do start live streaming. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Chris, that definitely might be something I'll link up with you at some point on it, and maybe just do more in general with everybody. But I've been really trying to get into a good routine, and so I'm going to focus on doing these live streams and just hop on and show you what I'm working on. I think, like somebody said yesterday, everything's interesting, and I agree. It definitely helps me as well. It has helped me in the past just to talk with other artists and see what they're doing. And yeah. Can you tell me how you came about in the puzzle world? Yeah, the puzzle world is licensing. So I have some puzzles with Buffalo Games right now. I have had some puzzles with Suns Out puzzles in the past, but I have spotted a couple puzzles in Wally World, a couple other places. I think that depends on individual retailers and who manages the stores. But there is a series out with Buffalo Games, and I will be doing more in the future. But that is, it's a pretty simple endeavor. I chose to go the route of an agent who did licensing for me, and I'm moving away from that. So as I get more comfortable with the business side of things, but really all of these companies who put artwork on their products are always looking for artists to use, because many times these companies' product is all about the image, and whether that's a puzzle or a popcorn tin, or even as something as simple as the design on a light switch cover, which I have had my work license for that. They all need good artwork and good images to use, and a lot of times they have ways that you can even submit your artwork to them, like maybe a form to fill out, and then like a review process. But a lot of times it's helpful just to reach out to the companies that you like and just say hi and see what they think, and see if you can get a response. But it's about as simple as that. And when you're licensing your work, you get paid in royalties, and that's quarterly. So a lot of times it's definitely not quick money. And I think that's probably the general sentiment throughout, is that it's definitely a long-term plan. When you license your artwork, by the time that it actually gets used on the product and then distributed to stores or online retailers, it can be months or even, a year. So by the time that those things will pay any, it could be a year and a half, sometimes up to 2 years. But it's a great way definitely to get your name out. I do have a lot of people who get puzzles and then reach out to me after they've done the puzzle. And so that's pretty cool. Just looking at the comments. Are you self-taught? Yeah, I definitely took art classes when I was in middle school, and have kind of some nice, can almost see, so just to pause that real quick, I have the indication of some rocks underwater through here, and then as you go back, it's going to start to blend in to maybe leaves or foliage that have dropped down. This is the fall, and so the leaves are colored, they're dropping, and so I'm going to start to merge these colors of these rocks in with the leaves and the foliage, and some of this is the colors of the brush reflecting onto the water. But then as you go back up here, I want it to open back up again and have this almost be like a little pocket of water back here where you can kind of look into. And so that's my hope. It kind of it really adds depth, and you can almost feel your way back there. But I took art classes definitely whenever I could in grade school, and then I think it was like my senior project for just general art class. The students really liked it, my classmates, and people had said that I should start selling, and I had never really considered that before, and it was always just kind of like a hobby to draw, whether I was in class or just in my own free time. So then after high school is when I really started to think about, what was possible with the artwork that I create, and what could I do if I focused on it. And so it was around that time that I really went sort of head first into trying to teach myself different things about art. And I used pastels and colored pencils for the longest time. Did a lot of drawing, of course, and then I think around when I was 20 I started to pick up paint, and then from there it's sort of been just a trial and error process ever since. So I would say that it's mainly self-taught. I have picked up a few things from some other people over the years, but when I think about my art, I really think that I have a specific vision of something I want to accomplish, and I have a story to tell, and that's a long conversation to get into, but it's hard for me to look to other places to teach myself how to do that, because I don't know if I think we all need to tell our own stories, or only us as individuals really know what exactly we're after, and discovering how to get to that place where you feel like you've accomplished that can be very personal. And because of that, I think just, it's not that I don't like to get help from other people, but I've just found that I really enjoy trying to figure that out for myself and seeing how I could accomplish that. And so maybe that's why I've been mostly self-taught, because maybe I have just the self-awareness to know that I think the only way of discovering that for me is through trial and error, and taking from my personal experiences in painting and just in the wild and around my subject matter, and trying to build off of that. So that's, yeah, the long answer in my self-taught. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Where in Minnesota did you grow up? I'm from Shakopee, Stillwater. I grew up in Stillwater, and we had a cabin in Amory, Wisconsin. My folks still have a place there. I don't think I spent much time in Shakopee, but love home, love going back. I'm back visiting friends and family pretty often. Do you paint without looking at the reference images? At this point, I am, but no, I mean, I use a lot of my photos. The photos that I share in the members, I'm constantly looking at them. And a lot of the artwork that I do, just going back to kind of that personal endeavor and personal vision of mine, so much of that comes from being outside and observing the landscape and everything that goes along with it. And so I think I often daydream about places when I'm there, so to speak, and those daydreams is those things I think about is what I try to capture in my work, and they're so vivid, and so I want my artwork to capture that, and that's hard to do without looking at something. And so it's not like I necessarily want everything to be a photo. I definitely don't. But I want it to feel the same way that I feel about, when I daydream and the things I think about and the things that I envision and the things I imagine. I want it to feel that way, and I don't know how. The way I want to accomplish that is to have things be real, and that is really something that you need a reference to help you with. But then when I get into sort of this stage, this is why I think this part of the painting is most fun for me, because it's most enjoyable, because I get to focus on my painting and worry less about the specifics of it, because a lot of it is really well established at this point. And so it's easy for me to play off of what I have on the canvas already at this stage. So in the beginning stages, I'll use a lot of the photos I take to really help me but then at this point I'm really looking at the painting itself, and I'm trying to see things that maybe don't look right to me. There's some things about the photos that I've had that gives me the ideas of all these things. But yeah, this part I would consider to be my favorite part, just because I feel like I can free up what I'm thinking about and really just focus on the canvas. I'm leaving those rocks behind a little bit and trying to get into the water in front here. And actually, before I do that, I might want to establish the rocks in front of the bear. Hello, are you using a phone? Kristen asks, a phone to record or camera? Because it's super clear. Would love to see your setup one day. Yeah, I'm using a device called the Gamblin 4K. It's just a little thing that plugs into your computer, and then I have that with an HDMI cable hooked up to my Canon R. And then on the Canon R, I'm currently using the 16 to 35 f4 lens. It's an expensive setup, but yeah, it is really awesome. It takes wonderful photos, and that's really what I bought it for. But turns out you can live stream with it, and I really didn't know that. I tried to live stream with the I have a new GoPro, and then I also have the G7X Mark III, and neither of them really suffice. Just did not compare to this. But that's all it. And then I'm using a Blue Yeti microphone. Just set up. Oh, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. When I started 4 years ago, you were one of the first painters that I saw and started learning from. You gave me so much inspiration. Hit me up if you ever want to do something in the future. Yeah, absolutely. On that note, I really hope, thank you again, Chris. I really hope in the future, we're planning on moving soon. We would like to, it's kind of a crazy market right now, so it's a little bit of a pause right now while we're being patient, but we'd like to get a place with some land and open up something more public, and so I would really like to just connect with more people, have a place that people could visit, see my work, of course, but see, just connect in person, and then on that, just do more in the future in general. So Chris, I appreciate it, and that's definitely something I want to think about as we move forward. And as getting back to what I said before, as I get more comfortable with these live streams, I really think that my schedule is going to start opening up, because we used to spend so much time, even on the very little amount of videos we did, we'd spend so much time on editing them and putting that together. A little bit lighter color here. So I hope that can help free up my schedule, so that maybe I could focus on doing some other things like that. How do you decide your color palette? I find it a bit difficult. I'm trying to read this. It's pretty small. I find it a bit difficult to decide which colors I should mix and match the colors in the reference picture. So I do stream my color palette live to the channel members before every live stream on the channel, and I talk about that further. I mean, the colors, I start with the same colors every day, and it really, how I mix them sort of depends on what it is I'm working at. But I've kind of developed my own system of which colors to mix and how, and that's purely based off just that's just purely based off of just experience that has come with just time and time again of mixing colors in the same way, and eventually I get comfortable and I build and develop that relationship with the colors I use out of the tube, and then it just kind of becomes an art form. But I really think about color mixtures as something very simple, and just thinking here. When I think about mixing colors on the palette, it's very relaxed and it's not very planned. I just think of it in terms of like, I need a few warm colors, I need some brownish colors, I need some blue colors, and maybe some blue colors that are more on the green spectrum down here, and then that's just available for me. And then what you're seeing now is really is where I put most of my thought into it. It's just, a lot of it is kind of just on like a gut level feeling of how I'm gonna mix something. How many brushes are you using right now? I'm just using just this the same one, and I've been using the same brush for a while in this process. Not since the beginning of the painting did I use something else. Just ordered 4 Dagger Striper brushes in different sizes. Very excited. Yeah, I think you're gonna like them. It's really become my favorite tool. What state were you thinking of getting land for more public interaction? It's a good question. Thanks, Evelyn. We're probably going to stay in Montana. I think the question is where we want to go. We really like the western side more, particularly up north. I like the Whitefish area. It's really cool being next to Glacier. I really like the access to the wilderness up there. There's the Bob Marshall. It's nice being down here in the south part of the state, but there's also drawbacks to it. It's very dry around here, but we're probably going to stay in Montana. Come to Wyoming. I will at some point. Sorry if you've answered this, but did you finish the whole bear with that same brush? Yes. And then last question, are you cleaning the brush as I go along? Yep. And so whenever you hear that noise, I'm just sort of washing it in my wash can of paint thinner. And then trying to figure out where I am. That's typically just that's enough to wash it for me as I go. And okay, now I think I'm going to change this up a little bit. Grab some of this color. I typically won't wash my brushes any further than that unless I'm stepping away for a few days. What's the right spot to sign a painting? I sign it in one of the lower corners, and depending on the right or left, to me, that just depends on the particular painting. I haven't thought about this one. Yeah, I'm going to sign this one in the lower right. It just makes most sense. I don't know if there's any proper way to sign a painting. I think that's a individual matter, and as it should be. It's part of the way that you convey your art, and I think that's cool. See how different people sign. I like to see how different people sign their work. So I'm starting to think a little bit about like leaf litter through here. Which paint do I find myself using? Acrylic or oil? I'm just using oils right now. It's just something that I've been interested in. I find that there's a lot of challenge in oils, and I really like the fact that oils are there's a lot left, I feel like, for me to discover, and that sparks my curiosity. It's the part that I enjoy, is learning about the things I use and learning about creating and seeing what's possible. And oils are a difficult medium, especially at first, but I think that also leaves the door open for things yet to be discovered with the way that you can use oil paints, and I find that interesting, and it that's why I really like to use oils. So I'm just using oils right now. Just haven't really done acrylics probably for a year and a half now. So I'm starting to think about the leaf litter on the water, and I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm building myself up to sweep across with the aspects that make it seem like it's flowing. It's going to be flowing to the left. So I'm trying to build up some of the other things before I get to that. Mainly because these blues can get messy. They can interfere, especially with warm colors. So I'm trying to get some of the other colors established, and then I feel more confident about where that blue is going to live on the canvas, so I don't add too much too early or in the wrong area. Have you tried watercolors? Do you have any interest in doing watercolor painting in the future? I think I have an interest in I probably not, for me. I have used watercolors in the past when I was younger, and I do agree with you, and I think they're awesome. I love the effects that you can get. It's a really good question. When I think about why, though, I think I kind of go back to that same answer. It's just I'm really curious with oils, and it finds me I discover myself continuing to come back to it all the time, and that's what keeps me going. It's just I just feel like there's so much left to discover, and I don't feel like that as much anymore about watercolors, and that's just personal. But I've got some watercolors from way back when, stashed away somewhere. Oh, did you have the chance to paint any areas of the Great Smoky Mountains during your time there? I'm from Knoxville. That's awesome. Definitely know that area well. I did some plein air painting while I was there. Some of the things that I did there had me spending a lot of time in the backcountry and observing, recording some data, just various things. And so, yeah, I would find myself taking a lunch break and painting some different spots when I was in the park. And those are, I think I've posted those on my Instagram. That's about the time that I started posting to Instagram. So if you go way back down at the bottom, you'd find some of that. There's a lot of like cool old cabins, of course, and I did some of those. I spent a lot of time in Cades Cove, kind of daily. And then I also worked on the North Carolina side in Bryson City, up Deep Creek. I did that a couple years prior to that. Yeah, it's an inspiring place. I miss it. Still have a lot of friends down there. I definitely want to get back at some point. How do you know that? Thanks, James. That's a good question. How do you know how to price a painting? Is there a method that you use, square inches? I think I do judge my work on surface area size, but that has been something more of a newfound method, and that's just purely because as time has gone on, I've become more comfortable with what it takes to complete a painting, and let's see here. Let me grab a little bit more. I'm just continuing to grab from these blue colors. But maybe a better way to explain that is when I first started putting a price on artwork, it was a gut feeling, and I think that's the right way. If you're unsure about how to price your painting, I don't think that there's a science to it. I think it really is a gut level feeling, and that is very individual. And I always try to ask for as little as possible, and if I could get what I thought was at minimal what I thought was worth my time, I was more than happy. And so I tried not to think too much into it in the beginning years, and it was really just a gut level feeling, and that's all it was. Now as I grow and as I become more comfortable, and again I think this is where the personal part of pricing your work comes from, is as you begin to understand yourself more, understand what it takes to do what you do. You start to, through all of that experience, you start to become more comfortable with how to price things, and then I think the pricing starts to become more reflective of where it should be in your journey. But I don't think it's a bad recommend. I really disagree with the sentiment of making sure you don't charge too little. I understand that, but at the same time, just the process of getting yourself out there and getting paintings into other people's homes, that's huge for the learning process of how to appropriately charge for you. And until you get your feet wet, I think it's hard to determine. And I definitely have had those questions in the past, how to price artwork, but through time, yes, I start to think of things more in terms of size now and square inches, but that was only because I learned a lot about myself as an artist and what was appropriate to charge throughout the years, and then building on that and coming up with a better way of doing it, or just becoming more comfortable determining that. So I hope that helps. I know that's a tough thing, but it really is personal, and I wouldn't put too much thought into it. Just make sure that it's worth it for you, and you at the end of the day is that's what's most important. See some more questions coming in. Do you have any tips on how to improve your skills when you're doing art as a hobby? I love painting, but don't really have the time to work up special skills. I always paint a picture once I have the time. That's a good question. I understand where you're coming from. I gotta think about that one. Do you have tips on how to improve your skill? Yeah. I think that you'd find that you improve, and I've found that I improve the most when I'm not thinking about improving. And when things become enjoyable for me and when things become relaxing for me, that's when I start to discover things more. And even if that means, and sometimes I think that who we want to be as an artist is different than who we're meant to be as an artist or who we are. And a lot of times that's conflicting because who we want to be doesn't always align with that. And sometimes we want that really bad. And so then that can lead to, not being happy with something that, whatever result. And so sometimes I think just accepting your art for just what it is and accepting things for how they transpire, just for what they are, and having enjoyment in that. I think whatever that is and however that manifests itself, that just tends to be where your growth lies. And sometimes that can really blossom something beautiful and amazing. And so sometimes I think maybe the best advice for that is to just let go of any expectations, and however things turn out, just be happy with the time that you had in creating that, and be happy with the process of it. And I think you'd find that things just tend to work themselves out. So I like that. So now you can kind of see the rocks starting to flow across down here, and a little bit of foliage. So I definitely like that. I'm thinking about his legs and what I'm going to do around that. I might just cover up one like that. I do like when things are a little bit varied. So sometimes I think that kind of it's a distraction. It's a subtle distraction, and maybe helps you think about how that bear is tied into the landscape a little bit less. So I like to break that up. That rock might be just enough. So I think I'm going to think about the water. How do you manage your time? How do you balance everyday life with your artwork? Then I saw another question about how much time I spend on a painting. I spend these large 30 by 40s, I spend about several weeks on each one of time, and that's a lot of that time is involved in the painting. So it's hard to put hours on it. It's hard for me to keep track of hours, but it's a lot. It's a pretty solid several weeks when I'm really working on something. Then how do I manage my time? That's a really good question. I know that I definitely not perfected that, and it's why I'm starting to do these live streams too, because that's part of me thinking about how to get some of my time back. And well, I'll tell you that my typical day, I usually go to bed early, because I like to get up early. I get some form of physical activity in the morning. I like to get out and do a hike. I like to put myself into my subject matter if I'm doing that. So going out and hiking in nature is really helpful for me, and that just puts me in the right mood, puts me in a good mood, and that helps me when I get back to the Easel. Helps me just calm down after that. But then there's always a lot of things that need to be done aside from painting. So I'll typically try to paint in the morning because that's usually when I'm feeling the most creative and I'm feeling the most willing to be still in front of the canvas. I definitely struggle with spending long periods of time in front of the easel. So I try to get a couple hours in the morning or midday. So I went out and did a hike this morning, some things around the house. And then I do just this right now as I'm usually at the easel and I'm working on something. And then there's always, and on weekdays, we typically have at least a couple of orders, meaning prints. So we'll print those and sign and package those. And I say we because my fiance Erica, she helps me, and so it's nice having her around. So she does a lot of that prep work, and so as a team we kind of get some of the administrative stuff figured out midday after I've had a few hours to focus on my art. And then I do really well in the evening with painting. I'm always I seem to, once I can get started, and that's the big part for me, is if I can just get some work done on the paintings early, it's easy for me to pick back up and keep going. And then that really helps me in the latter part of the day. And that's after dinner, I really do well with my artwork. I seem to get a lot done around that time. But I try to spend, to be honest, very little time on social media and managing the online side of things. So it's important to me to share what I'm doing through all the various means that we know of. But I try not to overthink it, and then I try to just move on to my day quickly. And so definitely like making a list of things that I want to do. And especially like the day before, that really helps me manage my time. So I hope that helped provide some clarity. What kind of seat or stool do you prefer that doesn't wear out your posture? This is like what I'm sitting on now is it's sort of like a salon stool. Pretty cushiony. I don't really use the backrest. I'm leaning forward a lot of the times. And then I stand a lot when I paint as well. Is your studio well lit with natural light? I use shoot, I'm trying to think of the waveform. I think it's waveform lighting, and I use 48 inch LED, like LED alternative lights that go in like a fluorescent socket, 48 inch. And then I use 5000K. And then part of one is kind of covered up a little bit, so I just kind of adjust that lighting a little bit as well. So now it's things are starting to come together. That back leg, want something maybe in front of that back leg. Yes, this is oil painting. It's oil paint. Gamblin Artist Oils, and Liquid and Pasto. That's a good question. Can we expect to see a duck stamp painting this year? Just painted my first duck after the redhead. I'm glad it was helpful. Maybe. So with the duck stamp, that's really important to me to get my own photographs, and that's a hard thing to do, to get out. And this year, I believe, is one of the eligible species. Probably the only one that I'm interested in doing is, I think, the Barrow's Goldeneye is eligible this coming year. So I may, if I can find some. I know a few rivers around here do get those this time of year. We'll see. The duck stamp is really difficult. I might change my attitude a little bit on it and maybe be a little more relaxed with how I go about that, but possibly. I need to get some photos first. Okay, so now things are starting to make a little more sense. As I kind of pull back and look at this, I do like it. I'm trying to figure out what to do with this leg over here. Alana, hi Chuck, wondering when this piece of art will be available in print. I think probably it might be a couple of weeks, minimum a couple of weeks. It may be several weeks as well. I have to let it dry, and then I'll be varnishing it before I do the prints. So that'll be, yeah, probably several weeks minimum. So these blues up here have a little more magenta red hue in them. So behind the leg, I want there to be a little bit of like some I don't know, more. I want to see some of that definition of these riffles of water, but I think that the darker, more magenta, reddish toned blue is better suited for the shadows. How long have you been painting, and how much time are you spending with a painting in a day? So I've been painting I've been drawing and creating my whole life, but I've been painting for about 18 years, 17 years, 17 perhaps. And then in a day, I'm pretty disappointed if I don't get 5 hours of painting in a day, but yesterday I think it probably ended up being, I probably had a good 6.5 to 7 hours of painting yesterday, and that's a good day, and that's physically applying paint to the canvas. I guess that doesn't really include, prepping in the morning and clean up at the end of the day. Some days, some crazy times, I'll do more than that. It's hard to paint more than 8 hours. It really is. And there's typically always something that I can find other than painting to do that's productive. So after about 8 hours, it's tough for me to keep going, and I try to break that apart. Like I said, I'll do a little bit in the morning, and then I typically do something, take a break. We're going to the hot springs this evening, so I'm gonna soak it up this evening, and then sometimes I get back from something like that, and maybe even do a little bit more work before I call it a day. But I try to, when I mix my colors, I really try to utilize them and get a full day in and use up all those colors. wash the brush. Do you do custom commissions? I don't do custom work anymore. That's how I started, and I did a lot of pet portraits for the longest time. That's a great way to really get your toes wet, your feet wet, and selling your work. And but over the years, I've always wanted to work on this vision or this goal of mine that I have, and I still don't think I'm there, that I have as an artist and what I want to get across with my work. And that's hard to do with custom work, because that obviously that takes away time from that. And so I haven't been doing custom work in recent years, last couple of years, just because I just really want to focus on, and I feel blessed to be able to focus on that. And so I'm going to take full advantage of it, of the ability to focus on what I really want to focus on in my work. So I have stepped away from custom work. Okay. And I'm just... I might brighten up. I like how this area down here, it has this, it's kind of like a nice spot of sun glistening off these rocks. And I kind of want to achieve that. I feel like I'm not getting bright enough with this area, so I'm gonna go for something here. I like that. Yeah, thanks for the in-depth and honest response. You're most welcome. I'm happy to discuss anything related to art. Just thank you all for being here. It's awesome to see everybody in the comments. Sorry if I missed any questions. I'll try to continue to get to most of them. Painting rocks can be so relaxing. It's so cool to just grab a gob of paint and make a stroke and then feel like you're happy with it. It's so satisfying, because a lot of stuff takes more work than that, but rocks can be easy once you get the hang of it. So I bounce around a lot. And as things start to develop, and I do like this area right here, before getting ahead of myself and doing maybe too much, I do like to move around. So I'm just looking for various things that I want to say, perhaps bother me still. I kind of want to break apart this area in the back a tad more. So I'm going to grab some of these yellows. Maybe just get some of this branch to kind of peek down through this water. Lynn asks, which artist did you follow when you started? Are you familiar with Stuart Davies? Did he makes some YouTube videos? He has, right? I think I've seen his work from those. Perhaps, if I'm thinking right. I don't know. No, I don't know his work too much. So when I was a kid, and a lot of you probably know this if you're around the area of the Midwest, but when I was a kid, Terry Redlin was just everywhere. And I grew up in the early 90s when we still had the fine art print stores that would just sell basically just prints, and they'd be like in the shopping malls and stuff. And man, I used to always go and just stare at the Terry Redlin prints on the wall, and I related to it so much because the way that he told stories about the Midwest and Minnesota and South Dakota, and it just, of course it spoke to so many people, but it really, the reason why I think he was so loved was it was just captivating for people that he really did capture life in the Midwest and life in Minnesota in the most genuine way, and then with just such like a execution that was just like I speechless. And when you see him like life size, and it's just, I was so inspired by his work when I was a child, and who I really looked up to for the longest time. And so I was really into artists that were from Minnesota, just because I could relate to that. The Hotman brothers, so 3 brothers out of Minnesota, did a lot of wildlife art. I loved their work. I followed their work so intently as well. Those that would be 4 artists, and those that's, if I had to say any names of people that inspired me when I was starting out, the way that they could capture and tell stories that I related to was just, phenomenal. Okay. Things are starting to shape up. I want to break apart something in this spot back here, and kind of like the rocks down here, so maybe warm it up a bit. Imagine little rocks under the surface back here. Yeah, looks good. Maybe something about this water. I haven't really addressed this water. It looks good, but I just want a little more. Maybe just some more definition of the shadows that I'm kind of thinking about. Okay. Grab some darker color yet. There we go. just love painting the rocks under the water. It's so much fun to just kind of imagine what's there. Water, I think once you get a pattern that you're comfortable with, it's very relaxing. It really can be any which way that you want it. Rocket X says bye. Thank you for joining. We'll see ya. Just one more time, thanks everybody for being here, tuning in. Appreciate the support. I think that's something that I'll do regularly. See how often. I'm not gonna put a set schedule on it quite yet, but I do enjoy it. It's fun to be able to connect with you all. It's kind of what I'm doing every day anyways, and just until recently we weren't really able to do this. It wasn't really an option, but sure is easier than editing video on the computer. Alright, so now we can start to see that those shadows really start to make a difference. And so what you're seeing now too is you know, like, of course, as I worked around this area, I left it blank before I got to the bear, and so a lot of this was done, and it's dried, of course. And so you're kind of seeing me having to, this is the one area where this is more of a second layer, because I did leave it unfinished, and so this is the kind of the transition zone where I am having to tie that in. But so it's just a little bit different process when you're layering over the top. Okay, so we got a rock right here, and on the front side of that rock, remember the water's flowing to the left. So on the front side of that rock, that water would hit it and create a little riffle right there, and then a few more down below it. Thinking about some of them highlights. Just picking up some white and just kind of mixing it in with some of this blue. There's definitely no wrong way to do it, but I think I find myself going extra slow and trying to just really digest every brush stroke, and then kind of ask myself at that same time, is that enough? And you know, so that I try to keep myself from overworking it. This is really the fun part, when some of these small details really begin to make a difference. So I'm going to pull up some of this red up here, mix it in. some of that lighter yellow. And I just want some of these colors to pop, because it's a very I mean, at the end of the day, we need color to show the light, and so those nice vibrant colors really emphasize the light. It's a pretty good thick roll of paint. I think I'm going to grab more orange into that. Doesn't have to be anything, just nothing in particular, just kind of some random shapes. Could be, well, it's whatever the viewer decides it to be. But like I said yesterday, you know, painting expressively and trying not to add too much detail, it can't be done without painting it. So you do have to make an impression to create impression. So I try to really think about what that translates to. But you know, obviously it can't have nothing there, and sometimes detail is too much. But you got to make a mark to make an impression. So really thinking about that right now, and just trying to think about the things that I can do to bring the attention, complement everything, and not distract, while at the same time just not distracting. Paul, how many layers of gesso do you recommend if I bought a questionable canvas so the paint won't soak in for preservability purposes? I mean, that's tough to say. I wouldn't overdo it, but I think like a couple layers would suffice, to be honest. It's looking good. I still might add a little highlight there. A little color on the back of that highlight. That's not bad. Let's pick up more of the... I'm definitely picking hairs at this point. Things could definitely be left the way they are. But I definitely have fun. You know what would be fun is pick up some foliage color. Let's get some burnt sienna. A little bit of blue. Just tone that down a bit. Bring it back. There definitely could be like maybe some leaf litter back here. So happy you're back doing more oils. Thank you for posting videos. I always learn something. Thank you. I'm glad this is working out. It's definitely working out good for me. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Again, just thanks everybody for being here. So enjoyed seeing your work. Brett says, need to take out horses. Now looking forward to doing more. Thank you. Most welcome. Thank you. It's definitely starting to come together. I like that area back there. Are we seeing the whole canvas? No. This is probably only, it's a 30 by 40 inch canvas, and from here to here is only about 1 foot, so it's about 3.5 feet wide. So this is just a segment of it. But I will I'm definitely going to still post the time lapses. And then I will have an extended video version of all of this where you just kind of see the whole process of this for the members. And then like yesterday, I streamed the bear. And then after a few hours, I took a break. Then the rest of the process of this bear, I will post that footage in the membership as well. Maybe I'm really jumping here, I know. When I start to jump a lot is when I start to realize I'm getting to be closer to being happy with everything. There, that's kind of nice. A little bit of highlight through there. You say you may work on a picture for a couple of weeks. How do you keep track of fat over lean rule? Thanks, William. That's a good question. So I mix about 20% of medium into my paints. And then I try to finish everything in one layer, and I'll do one portion of the painting at a time, and then I'll try to pick up from there and work on the next portion of the painting, and then each run of it is typically one layer, and then I will go in with a second layer of paint and touch up towards the end, and so then I'll just add just a little bit more medium than I normally do, and I think as long as you're conscious of it, I don't think it's a real big problem. I think you get into a problem with fat over lean when you're not paying attention. So I think as long as that's on your mind and you're at least making an effort to not paint really lean paint, meaning no medium in it, over paint that has medium in it. As long as you're conscious of that, I think you're going to be okay. At least that's kind of the way that I like to think about it. Maybe I could pick up some brighter yellow, and I could add a few brighter colors through here. Lynn asked, when you first started painting, did you find yourself stepping back to look at the painting often? Yeah, and I still do that a lot today. That's definitely something that I feel like I have to do all the time, is really standing back. That's definitely an important part of the process. Okay, I might want... a little bit more, I'm going to continue with that shadow in the blue. A few more shadows through here. Yeah, I'm definitely picking hairs at this point. It's looking very good. Those rocks up there I never really got back to. Just add a little bit of definition. To divide those rocks up a bit, you know, and then I wonder if I actually just picked up some white, get some warmth in that white. And then just add some highlights. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Yeah, too much paint. Yeah. I think I kind of clipped the bear right there. To use graphite pencils, I don't do much graphite anymore. I did not have I mean, I used a lot of mechanical pencil, and then I used some of the darker ones, like 8B pencils, but I never really had a specific kind. I'm not too well adversed in graphite, my knowledge anyways. Remember, you got to show that color to show the light, so I always try to remind myself of that. thank you for spending some valuable time with us. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here. What temperature of lights do you use in your studio? I use 5000K, and thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it. I use 5000K lights. I just touched on this earlier. I use the waveform. I think they're LED, if I'm not mistaken. But they're like a flicker-free 48-inch like fluorescent replacement bulb. And they have the really high color rendering index, the CRI. I try to when the light that I'm painting on, it says it's a CRI of 95 plus, and so I try to use something with a high color rendering index so that you can really see the colors for what they are. But yeah, I've liked the waveform. They've been good so far. Some nice reds. Could probably use a little more highlight on that one rock right here. Just a little bit different texture to that. Hey, beginner here, do you use anything to make your paint flow? Mine always seems to fade out so quickly when I make a stroke. So these are oils, so they flow a lot better than acrylics typically. But with acrylics, I would always add like some sort of glazing medium to it, and then some water to increase the flow. With these, I use liquid impasto, and then paint thinner. So I use just odorless mineral spirits Gamsol, and that really I do add that to maintain the flow. Hey, I don't know if you answered this, but I want to ask, how long did it take to become this good? Thank you. And what do you have to say to people who have just started? I think it's a lifelong endeavor. I'm in my mid-30s now, and it definitely feels like it's. I still feel, even though I know I get so many amazing compliments, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I never myself, though, I don't really feel like I've arrived yet, and I don't think you'll ever lose that feeling as an artist of feeling like you've made it. There always is a hill to climb, and wherever you are in the process, and I think just embracing that climb, and embracing the fact that it's going to be a struggle. That in that, just like being in science class, and half the fun is conducting the experience, not whether they go right or wrong. That to me is what I feel like what has helped me grow over the years, is that I have fun with the experiment. And not the outcome, so to speak. And by focusing on that, I think it allows me to just keep expanding and trying different things, even if they might not work out, and just be willing to learn new things and just kind of go with the flow. That has helped me. So that's would be my recommendation, is just don't take it too serious, and definitely try to find like the love in playing around with it, and I think you'll just find that things come with time. Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Random stuff. Appreciate it. How long does it take you to do a masterpiece? Yeah, I mean, it's a common question. It takes several weeks, and when I say that, it takes the majority of that time. And I'm usually working day and night. I don't know how many hours, to be honest. That's a really hard question. But I definitely get consumed with my paintings, and not in a bad way. I'm just very obsessive about things that I have a passion in, and so it pairs nicely with my paintings because I get so obsessive. I feel like I do finish things a lot quicker in time than I used to. How long does it take to dry? That's a good question. It'll be dry to the touch by tomorrow morning. The bear is already dry. Yeah. But then how long it takes to cure and to really, dry for the long term, that can be just depending on how thick it is. It can be several weeks. It can be even a month. But I do like to use the Gamvar. It's a varnish that can breathe and it allows the paint to continue to cure as long as the thickest part of it is hard enough. So if you put, I think the rule of, like the standard way of figuring it out is just kind of use your fingernail, and if things feel nice and firm, it's probably ready to varnish. Grab a little more white. I feel like this rock down here needs a little more division between that and the water. That's not bad. Christine, thank you. Hope you had a good rest. Didn't expect to view your live stream right the next day. Yeah, I know, right? Thank you so much for your kindness. I appreciate it. Thank you. I admire your talent, but also your patience. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share. It really is what I'm doing normally. I'm here normally, and I don't mind visiting while I paint for sure. So hopefully this just kind of becomes a regular thing, and just kind of hang out. And like I said earlier, I'll still do the time lapses and post those, but kind of over trying to strategize for YouTube. I'd rather just do it, and just continue on with my day, and not have to think about how I'm going to make a video. I'd rather just focus on the painting, and it's fun to get to visit with you guys. Thank you as well, as always. When do you know when a painting is finished, and how can you stop? And when do you know it's finished, and when you can stop? Well, I think so much of that is personal. It really is. That's at least the way that I viewed it. I think you really have to ask yourself what you're trying to accomplish, and then when you do call quits on a painting, I think that's just a choice of judgment, and then where you learn from that is then when you look back at that painting perhaps a month later or 2 months later, and I often find myself even looking back at a painting that I've done years ago, and that's when I feel like I have more clarity on being able to determine did I walk away from that at the right time, or should I have worked something a little bit more as maybe a certain area of it. And so the more paintings you finish, I think the more you'll answer that question for yourself. And that's just such a personal thing, and it's really something that I think we have to, that is one of the things that you kind of have to learn on your own, if that makes sense. How many layers of varnish? Just one. One layer varnish, typically as thin as possible, and that's just as directed. There's a lot of videos where people are pouring the varnish, and it seems to be a very regular thing. I would highly discourage that. Do not pour your varnish on your painting, because then it's fine, but if somebody wants to restore that painting in the future, that's a lot of varnish on the painting, and in order for them to restore it, they have to remove that varnish. It can cause problems, so you're not really changing the outcome for yourself, but you're potentially changing the outcome for who's going to be handling your work many years down the road, perhaps when you're gone. So keep that in mind. Thin to win on the varnish. So overall, I think that's starting to look pretty good. It may be hard to really assess this from your guys' perspective, as there's so much going on in this painting outside of the view that you have right here, and so when I look at the screen of the camera, I feel like I'm not getting the same. These are just things that I'll think about later, but I feel like I'm not kind of getting the same vibe from as when I'm just looking at it in person. I feel like the highlights really pop out in the painting overall, but it's kind of, we're pretty close here, so it's hard to see that. But gosh, I think we're getting to a point where and this just goes back to the same thing I was just talking about. When do you know when to walk away? That's hard. Sometimes you just need to stand back, get away, and then things come to you at a later time. So I think that's just what I'm going to do. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I'm going to go ahead and call it quits here. And I don't tentatively, it is finished, but I'm always open to come back to it, and I will probably keep poking at it throughout the day. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you for the super chats, for those who left those. Thank you for the new members. Have a great day. Happy painting. And we'll see you in the next live stream. Thanks, guys.